It was a quiet that felt wrong. The high desert air of Santa Fe, New Mexico usually carried the distant sounds of life, but around the sprawling adobe home of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, an unnerving stillness had settled. For days the phone had rung unanswered. Friends grew worried. On February 26, 2025, maintenance workers arrived for a routine check, a simple task that would unravel a deeply private tragedy. When their knocks and calls met only with silence, they alerted a security guard who, sensing the gravity of the situation, made the call that would bring the world crashing into the couple's secluded sanctuary. That call was to 911. What first responders discovered inside was a scene of profound sadness, a final silent chapter in a storied life. The home, a place of art and love, had become a tomb. Gene Hackman, the titan of the silver screen, was found on the floor of the mudroom, his cane lying nearby, a testament to his recent frailty. Not far away in a bathroom lay his beloved wife, Betsy Arakawa. The dry, high-elevation climate had eerily preserved the scene, adding a layer of desolation to the discovery. Alongside them, one of their 3 cherished dogs was also found deceased, a loyal companion to the very end. The world, which had long respected Hackman's wish for privacy, was about to learn of his passing in the most shocking way imaginable. The news hit like a tremor, rippling out from the quiet cul-de-sac in Santa Fe to every corner of the globe. Gene Hackman, at 95, was a legend who had simply vanished from public life, choosing a peaceful retirement over the glare of the spotlight. For him to be found this way, alongside his wife of 34 years, was unthinkable. The initial reports were sparse, leading to a whirlwind of speculation. Rumors began to circulate, whispers of a rare and deadly virus that had somehow breached the walls of their carefully guarded home. The mystery deepened, painting a picture not just of loss, but of a strange and inexplicable sequence of events that left investigators and the public with more questions than answers. The initial confusion was palpable. How could this happen? The sheriff's department immediately began its work, meticulously piecing together the timeline. There were no signs of a break-in, no evidence of a struggle, no immediate indication of foul play. Yet the circumstances were anything but ordinary. 2 other dogs were found alive in the home, scared but unharmed, silent witnesses to a tragedy they could not explain. The world held its breath, waiting for clarity, for an explanation that could make sense of the senseless. It was a Hollywood ending of the most tragic kind, one that even the great Gene Hackman could never have scripted for himself. Long before the quiet days in Santa Fe, there was Eugene Allen Hackman, a man forged in the crucible of the Great Depression. Born in 1930, his childhood was marked by instability and the sting of abandonment. When he was just 13, his father, a pressman for a local newspaper, casually waved goodbye to the family and simply never returned. That moment of departure became a defining one for young Gene, instilling in him a fierce, restless independence. Desperate for a different life, he lied about his age and joined the Marines at 16, seeking structure and escape in the rigid discipline of the military. It was a world away from the Hollywood sound stages where he would one day become king. After his service, a driftless Hackman found himself drawn to acting, enrolling at the Pasadena Playhouse in California. It was there he met another aspiring actor, a young man named Dustin Hoffman. The two became fast friends, bonded by their shared ambition and a mutual assessment from their instructors. They were both voted least likely to succeed. This judgment, meant to crush their spirits, instead fueled a stubborn determination. They were outsiders, character actors in a world of leading men, but they possessed a raw, electrifying talent that could not be ignored. They moved to New York, sharing cold water flats and dreaming of a breakthrough that seemed perpetually out of reach. The breakthrough finally came, not with a sudden explosion but with a slow, steady burn. Hackman honed his craft in off-Broadway productions and television guest spots throughout the 1960s. His role as Buck Barrow in 1967's Bonnie and Clyde earned him his first Academy Award nomination, and suddenly, the man least likely to succeed was in demand. But it was his turn as the hard-boiled, morally ambiguous detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle in the French Connection 1971 that catapulted him to superstardom. The role, which he almost turned down, won him the Oscar for Best Actor and cemented his persona as one of cinema's most compelling and intensely believable performers. Throughout the decades that followed, Hackman's filmography became a masterclass in versatility. He was the heroic Reverend Scott in The Poseidon Adventure, the brilliantly malevolent Lex Luthor in Superman, the inspiring Coach Norman Dale in Hoosiers, and the quietly menacing Little Bill Daggett in Unforgiven, a role that earned him his second Oscar. He retired in 2004, leaving behind a legacy of characters who were complex, flawed, and profoundly human. He walked away from it all at the peak of his powers, trading the roar of the crowd for the quiet hum of a life well lived, a life he would share with the woman who had captured his heart. While Gene Hackman was navigating the heights of Hollywood fame, a young woman named Betsy Arakawa was cultivating a different kind of art. Born in Honolulu in 1960, Betsy was a world away from the glitz of Los Angeles. She was a gifted classical pianist, her life dedicated to the discipline and passion of music. Her world was one of concert halls and quiet practice rooms, a sharp contrast to the bustling film sets and red carpets that defined Gene's existence. By 1984, she found herself in Los Angeles, working part-time at a gym to support her musical pursuits. It was in this unlikely setting that her world would collide with one of Hollywood's most respected actors. Their meeting was a classic study in opposites. Gene, then 54, was recently divorced and a global celebrity. Betsy, at 23, was a private citizen focused on her art. The 31-year age difference was significant, a gap that might have seemed insurmountable to others. Yet something clicked between the seasoned movie star and the poised musician. He was drawn to her intelligence, her grace, and her life outside the Hollywood bubble. She saw past the celebrity and connected with the man himself, his humor, his depth, and perhaps the quiet vulnerability that lay beneath his famously tough exterior. Their courtship was not a whirlwind romance, but a slow, deliberate getting-to-know-you that spanned several years. In 1991, after a 7-year courtship, Gene and Betsy married in a quiet, private ceremony, far from the prying eyes of the paparazzi. Their union was a testament to their shared desire for a life of substance over style. Betsy was never the movie star's wife in the traditional sense. She was his partner, his intellectual equal, and his staunchest supporter. Friends described them as inseparable, a team that navigated the world together. She was the anchor that grounded him, the calm in the storm of his residual fame. Their marriage was a fortress of privacy, famously devoid of the scandals and drama that so often plague Hollywood relationships. For 34 years their love story unfolded in private, a quiet harmony that endured. Betsy was not just his wife, she became his caregiver as the years advanced and health challenges emerged. She was the steady hand that guided him through the fog of his progressing Alzheimer's, her devotion, unwavering. Their relationship, which began with an improbable meeting and a significant age gap, blossomed into one of Hollywood's most enduring and private love affairs. They had built a life based not on public validation, but on a deep, abiding connection that would, in the end, see them through to their final days together. After Gene Hackman officially retired from acting in 2004, he and Betsy made a deliberate choice to retreat from the world. They settled into a beautiful Pueblo Revival-style home in a gated community in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The land of enchantment provided the perfect backdrop for the life they wanted to build, one of peace, privacy, and creative pursuit. The sprawling adobe structure, which Gene helped design, became their sanctuary. It was here, surrounded by the stark beauty of the high desert, that the former movie star could finally just be Gene, and the classical pianist could be Betsy, away from the expectations and demands of their former lives in Los Angeles. Their days in Santa Fe were filled not with idleness, but with passion. Gene, having conquered the world of acting, threw himself into new creative outlets. He became a painter, his canvases filled with the landscapes and colors that surrounded him. He also co-authored 3 historical novels, trading dialogue for prose and finding a new voice as a storyteller. Betsy, while no longer performing publicly, continued to fill their home with the sound of her classical piano, her music a private soundtrack to their shared life. They were avid hikers, often exploring the rugged trails with their beloved dogs, finding solace in the natural world. Despite their reclusive nature, the couple was not entirely isolated. They were invested in their adopted community, though they engaged on their own terms. Gene served for a time on the board of the prestigious Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, a role that connected him to the rich artistic heritage of Santa Fe. They were occasionally spotted in town, running errands or enjoying a quiet meal, but they masterfully maintained a low profile. They had created a life that was rich and full, but it was a life lived for themselves, not for public consumption. Their home was their world, a space filled with art, music, books, and the quiet companionship of their 3 dogs. This carefully constructed world was a testament to their bond. For over 2 decades, they lived in this self-contained paradise, their routines dictated by their interests and their deep affection for one another. Their marriage, which had already stood the test of time, deepened in the quiet intimacy of their Santa Fe home. They were more than husband and wife. They were best friends who had chosen to walk the final act of their lives hand in hand, surrounded by the things they loved most. It was a peaceful existence that made the eventual tragic discovery within those same walls all the more jarring and heartbreaking. The golden years in Santa Fe were, for a time, idyllic. But the relentless march of time eventually brought with it the inevitable challenges of aging. Gene Hackman, who had always projected an image of robust strength on screen, began to face significant health issues. He had a history of heart problems, having survived a near-fatal heart attack in 1990 that required angioplasty. As he moved into his 90s, his heart grew weaker, and he relied on a pacemaker to keep it beating in rhythm. Compounding this was a more insidious ailment, Alzheimer's disease. The cruel progressive illness began to slowly steal the sharp mind and quick wit that had defined him. Betsy, ever the devoted partner, transitioned seamlessly into the role of caregiver. She managed his medications, his appointments, and his daily needs with unwavering patience and love. Her presence was his constant, a familiar and reassuring light as the fog of his memory thickened. But while she was focused on Gene's declining health, a new and invisible threat was silently entering their home. In early February 2025, Betsy began to feel unwell. She complained of flu-like symptoms, aches, fever, fatigue. It seemed like a common bug, something to be endured. But this was no ordinary illness. It was something far rarer and far more lethal. Unbeknownst to the couple, their home had been infiltrated by rodents carrying hantavirus, a severe respiratory illness transmitted through the inhalation of airborne particles from infected droppings. The virus is notorious in the Four Corners region, but cases are rare, making it an unlikely suspect for a common ailment. Betsy's condition likely worsened quickly, progressing to hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, which causes the lungs to fill with fluid. The official timeline suggests her last known activity was running errands on February 11th. It is believed she succumbed to the devastating illness shortly thereafter, alone in her home while her husband, his own mind clouded by Alzheimer's, may not have fully comprehended what had happened. The timeline of their final days is muddled by tragedy and illness. Investigators were working to verify a reported phone call from Betsy on February 18th, where she allegedly complained of her symptoms. This detail conflicts with the medical examiner's estimated date of her death, around February 11th. This discrepancy became a central, heartbreaking question. Had she been alive for another week? Or was the call made by someone else, or the date simply misremembered? The mystery of that phone call added a layer of confusion to an already devastating scenario, leaving authorities to piece together a puzzle where some of the most crucial pieces were missing. With Betsy gone, Gene Hackman was left profoundly alone, adrift in a home that had suddenly lost its anchor. His advanced Alzheimer's likely left him unable to understand his wife's absence or to care for himself. The investigation painted a bleak picture of his final days. Analysis of his pacemaker revealed that it recorded its last activity and an abnormal heart rhythm on February 18, 2025, approximately a week after Betsy is believed to have died. When he was found, his stomach was empty, indicating he had not eaten for some time. The man who had survived so much was ultimately overcome by a broken heart and a failing body in the quiet solitude of his own home. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department, led by Sheriff Aiden Mendoza, conducted a thorough investigation to rule out any possibility of foul play. They found no evidence of forced entry, no signs of a struggle, and tests for gas leaks or carbon monoxide came back negative. The chief medical examiner, Dr. Heather Jarrell, delivered the final tragic verdict. Betsy Arakawa, age 65, died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Gene Hackman, age 95, died from hypertensive cardiovascular disease, with his advanced Alzheimer's listed as a significant contributing factor. It was not a crime scene, but the site of a profound human tragedy, a cascade of natural causes that led to a devastating end. The story of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa is not ultimately about the mysterious circumstances of their deaths, but about the enduring power of their life together. Theirs was a love story that defied Hollywood conventions, a private, 34-year marriage built on mutual respect, shared passions, and unwavering devotion. In a world that demands public performance, they chose a life of quiet authenticity. Betsy was his steadfast partner and, in the end, his dedicated caregiver. His reliance on her in his final years speaks volumes about the depth of their bond. Her sudden death created a void he simply could not overcome. The legacy they leave behind is twofold. For the world, there is the immense cinematic legacy of Gene Hackman, an actor of unparalleled talent whose characters will live on forever. But for those who look closer, there is the more intimate legacy of their love. It's a story about finding your person against all odds and building a life of meaning far from the spotlight. Their final tragic days, while heartbreaking, cannot overshadow the decades of quiet joy they shared. They were inseparable in life, and in a sad poetic twist of fate, they were not long separated in death, leaving behind a powerful silent testament to a love that truly lasted a lifetime.